It's a wake-up call in more ways than one. Time for some you need to know.
You know the old saying, oh, that sucks for you? It does when you have receipts and you can prove that what people are saying may not be the truth. We've talked about U.S. Representative Derrick Van Orden on this show before. Well, now he is denying that he voted for cuts to health care when he backed President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill last year, legislation that will affect access to Medicare and Medicaid for thousands of Wisconsinites. Now, he was doing an interview with WXOW in La Crosse, and Van Orden responded to protesters that were outside his town hall meeting in Sparta who said they were disappointed by his vote for the bill last year, which includes cuts to Medicaid and Medicare. In the interview, DVO said that while protesters had the right to be there, he just wished, quote, they knew what they were talking about, end quote. He went on to say there have been no cuts to Medicare and Medicaid. There's not going to be cuts to Medicare and Medicaid. What's going to end, though, is the rampant waste, fraud, and abuse present. Here's where the it sucks for you comes in, because these are the facts of what happened with the big, beautiful bill. Maybe he forgot. Now, it's been a year. My memory isn't what it used to be, so perhaps Derrick Van Orden's memory is not what it used to be either. So I will refresh his and your memories. The facts. All of Wisconsin's Republican delegation in Congress supported Trump's bill. The bill included, listen to this part, tax cuts, increased spending on immigration enforcement and the military, and a nearly $1 trillion cut to Medicaid. What? A $1 trillion cut to Medicaid. Oh, Brian, I thought he said they didn't cut Medicaid. A $1 trillion cut to Medicaid. That's according to USA Today. Now, the cuts are expected to go into effect by 2027, so maybe that's what he meant. Maybe he was saying, you didn't get any, there's no cuts right now. Maybe it's all a matter of timing for DVO. We don't know. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that more than $900 billion in Medicaid spending cuts under the new bill over a decade. How much, Brian? $900 billion in Medicaid cuts. Oh, Republicans argue measures such as work requirements for able-bodied recipients are in place to ensure Medicaid isn't cut for those who need it. The CBO estimates more than $500 billion in Medicaid yearly automatic cuts over the decade. Now, the bill requires able-bodied adults to work 80 hours per month to qualify for Medicaid benefits. It freezes the provider tax in states like Wisconsin that have not expanded Medicaid, and it gradually lowers the provider tax rates in expansion states from 6% to 3.5%. If you're not sure, Medicaid is the primary health program for low-income people. It's jointly financed by states and the federal government and is known as BadgerCare here in Wisconsin. So last year, shortly after the bill was signed into law on July 4th, Wisconsin lawmakers rushed to sign a state budget into effect to avoid the freeze on the provider tax. The budget included a provision that expanded the state's tax on hospitals from 1.8 to 6%. But for Derrick Van Orden to say that the protesters don't know what they're talking about, maybe you need to look in the mirror, sir. They seem to know what they were talking about because the big, beautiful bill did indeed have cuts to Medicaid. All right, let's go from Republicans in Wisconsin to Republicans in the U.S. Senate. Senate Republicans yesterday again blocked Democratic legislation that would halt President Donald Trump's war with Iran, but the number of GOP senators voting against the war did grow. Listen to this. Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski, she of the flip-flop mulirap, she loves to flip and flop. She voted against the war for the first time since it began at the end of February. Two other Republicans, Senators Susan Collins of Maine and Rand Paul of Kentucky, also voted against the war, as they have done in previous votes. The War Powers legislation ultimately failed to advance 49 to 50. With Parker, I'm going to give you a guess on this. Who was the one senator that the only Democrat who opposed it?
Was it John Fetterman?
It was indeed John Fetterman. Ding, 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 ding. Again, the prize closet woefully empty, but someday it'll be filled, and you'll get something. Yes, John Fetterman, the Democrat in name only, the Dymo, as the Republicans like to call people rhinos. I'll call him a Dymo. He voted to oppose it, yet the close tally reflected growing unease with Trump's war. Several other Republican senators have signaled they want Congress to weigh in on the direction of the conflict. There will be a day, and it might be soon, according to Democratic Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia, where this Senate will say to the president, stop this war. Even if it passes the Senate, a war powers resolution would have a slim chance of passing in the House because we all know that Mike Johnson is a yes man for the administration. Democrats say the votes are about building political pressure on the president either to withdraw from the conflict or seek congressional authorization to wage the war. He will never do it. Now we are in Operation Sledgehammer, if you are keeping track of the various operation names that change before or at the 60-day mark where the president would be required, by the Constitution and whatnot, which doesn't seem to mean much, but he would be required to then get congressional approval for the war. So the White House has asserted that it does not need congressional authorization for the war and has circumvented legal requirements. It claims it has terminated hostilities with Iran because the U.S. has entered a ceasefire. We've heard all that from the president and from Pete Hegseth, and it doesn't ring true to anybody because even during the ceasefires, it's hard to be in a ceasefire when you are actually launching missiles at another country and another country is launching missiles at you. That posture has created tension between Republican-controlled Congress and the White House because presidents under the War Powers Resolution are required to obtain authorization from Congress after 60 days, which we know. And we also know that if you start a new action, that bypasses that, and that is the loophole that I think we need to look at closing someday. Republican leadership has continued to back the war, arguing that the stalemate in the Strait of Hormuz that has blocked most commercial shipping ports puts more economic pressure on Iran than it does on the U.S., but let's all remember, and I don't think we've said this all week, Parker, but the Strait of Hormuz was open before this, and there was a nuclear deal in place before this. But the president did not like that deal because it was brokered by Barack Hussein Obama. And yes, and I said Hussein because I know that's how this administration refers to him. But so Barack Obama had this deal in place. The strait was open. Everything was going along. There were international inspectors going into Iran. Now, I don't trust Iran as far as I can throw them, but I also know that these international inspectors had no ties to anybody, and they were keeping Iran's nuclear program in check. For some reason, somebody whispered in Trump's ear that there was a bomb, imminent threat, and off to the races. All right, moving on, more stuff you need to know. Neenah Foundry is going to have to pay $200,000 to settle DOJ air control violations. Neenah Foundry Company will pay $200,000 to settle claims that it violated air pollution control permits and state and federal regulations. The Wisconsin Department of Justice on May 6 filed a complaint against the foundry in Winnebago County Circuit Court that alleged 18 violations of its air control permits. The Wisconsin DNR regulations and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency regulations, all of those alleged to have been violated. So Neenah Foundry's current owner, Charlotte Pipe and Foundry Company, in a statement to the Post-Crescent, said that the investigations were related to record-keeping practices, and permit interpretations prior to its ownership. Now, Charlotte Pipe's statement noted that matters the state investigated did not involve actual emissions violations or allegations of pollution. So the nearly $200,000 payment includes the fine, surcharges, and court costs. So even they have to pay fees, just like if they were buying something from Ticketmaster. The state alleged that 18 violations related to the foundry's failure to maintain and operate air pollution control devices and monitors, inadequate record keeping, and failures to report incidents to the DNR. So the Charlotte Pipe and Factory went on to say in their statement that investigations from 2019 and 2021 prior to the company's acquisition of Neenah Foundry in 2022. So since Charlotte Pipe's acquisition, it said there have been no substantive findings in any of the federal or state investigations. So we will follow this and see what comes of that. And if it is just record keeping and it was all before, well, then good on them for not polluting the air more than anybody else, I guess, or at least staying within the guidelines if they do. All right, Jerome Powell has been on the hot seat for a long, long time as the Fed chair. Well, his term is coming to an end, and the Senate has confirmed his replacement. U.S. Senate confirmed Kevin Warsh as chair of the Federal Reserve, one of the most powerful roles in the federal government that holds enormous sway over the economy. Just hearing that sentence, do yourself a favor and wonder, who will Kevin Warsh be answering to? I wonder if he's a friend of the president. And I wonder if he will do with the rates what Jerome Powell has refused to do. Well, let's find out with a little more information, shall we? While you ponder that question. The 54-45 Senate vote on Wednesday was split along party lines with the exception of, Parker, one Democratic senator. Who do you think?
I'm going to go for the two-time John Fetterman.
You would win 2 times. Ooh. Yes. Wow. Dino the Dinosaur Senator John Fetterman from Pennsylvania, who joined the Republican Party in its vote. It was the most divisive confirmation vote for that position in the history of the Federal Reserve. Warsh was confirmed to a 4-year term as chair and a 14-year appointment on the Fed's rate-setting board. Now, Warsh will officially step into the role today. Today is May 14th, and that is the term of Jerome Powell's. His term ends today, so Warsh is now the guy. He's taking over leadership of the Fed at a time when the central bank faces immense pressure from the Trump administration to lower rates, even as inflation climbs and war in the Middle East continues. But hey, that's all right. We know the Fed sets those interest rates. We know that Warsh has echoed Donald Trump's calls to lower rates, but he has to convince other members of the Fed's board to do so. He was, before Warsh, the most divisive Fed chair confirmation was in 2010 when Ben Bernanke was confirmed by a 70-30 vote. Warsh is an Ivy League economist, former Wall Street banker. He previously served as a Fed governor from 2006 to 2011, and during his time on the board, he was known as an inflation hawk, advocating for higher interest rates to combat high inflation, and now he's a Trump hawk where he is going to push, it seems, for lowering the rates despite everything else that's going on. He interviewed for the top position at the Fed in 2018. Trump ultimately appointed Powell, a decision he now calls, quote, a really big mistake, which ironically is what a lot of voters are calling his election